Schumacher that you're looking at on the grid. And if he gets away first, it's going to be mighty, mighty difficult for even Michael Schumacher to pass him. David Coulthard there treading on their heels, and this morning in the warm-up, the two McLarens were faster than both the Ferraris. There was only 6/100ths of a second in it between Coulthard and Häkkinen. Michael Schumacher 0.2 of a second slower than the fastest McLaren. Rubens Barrichello, fourth fastest, 0.8 off the pace. So it's looking like another McLaren versus Ferrari contest, but I wouldn't like to put money on any of the four of them.
I think they're not sure either. Talking to Häkkinen just before they went to the grid, he's expecting a very close race, and certainly whenever they've all been on the track at the same time, there's been a 10th or less between the three of them. Barrichello just hanging on by his fingertips, really. Coulthard you saw getting in the car quite late. That's because he left his earplugs in the toilet, would you believe? But all of these simple things can affect you when you've got to get a Grand Prix underway. But I think it is going to be extremely competitive at the front end, and I think the tactics today, the strategies, and getting in and out of the pits is going to play a very crucial part in this race.
Been a bit of a downer for Rubens Barrichello so far. He just hasn't been able to get to grips with the setup, the handling of his Ferrari for his third race with the Maranello team. And as I said, he was 0.8 of a second off the pace this morning. My man of qualifying, really, in spite of Mika Häkkinen's absolutely sensational lap, was Ralf Schumacher in that Williams BMW, fifth fastest on the grid. And this is from an engine that I think BMW have deliberately been downplaying in terms of its effect and advanced technology, because it did extremely well, of course, in the first race of the year, third place in its first Grand Prix in Australia, and Ralf Schumacher, who took that third place, was in fifth position in Brazil.
Yes, I think in fairness to us all who thought they were going to have a disastrous start to the season, that's because in testing we only seem to see the Williams on the end of a tow rope, really, with a lot of engine problems. But also in fairness to the team and Gerhard Berger of BMW, they kept saying, listen, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. And sure enough it is. I think that must have been quite an explosive engine in terms of performance that they put in for Ralf yesterday, because I don't think anybody, there's Gerhard Berger now, the head of competition at BMW, an old sparring partner of mine, but I don't think they even expected to be quite this far up the grid.
There is Ralf Schumacher. His teammate Jenson Button down at 18th place on the grid. He had all sorts of problems, hydraulic and other. He was 2.4 seconds off the pace in qualifying, but this morning Jenson was 11th fastest out of the 22 starters, 1.4 seconds off the pace.
I just watched Michael Schumacher do a practice start at the end of the pit lane, and there was virtually zero wheel spin as he took off. They really have got some clever electronics on these cars, and apparently and allegedly they're all going to disappear for Silverstone, the next Grand Prix. Definitely. So that's going to give them a lot of the teams quite a headache as they head off to the British. And while I mentioned the British Grand Prix, the tickets are now sold out for Sunday, 2 weeks today, but apparently you can still go and watch on the Friday and Saturday.
So away they go on the formation lap into the first left-handed chicane, left and right at the Tamburello, and left on the grid is Nick Heidfeld, and he was starting last in the Prost. They've really not done very well here, any more than they've done well at the other two races. They're very late in their development. So this is the Villeneuve chicane and up to Tosa.
Yes, well, of course, if you stall on the line, you have to go to the back of the grid, and as you've already pointed out, Murray, he can't find neutral. That's his problem. They've got the back jacked up and he can't get it into neutral. They can drop him off the jack, but when he gets round to the start-finish line. But the rules, because he was at the back of the grid anyway, what he mustn't do, if the light procedure started when he gets around to the grid, he has to go in the pit lane. He must not cruise up to the back of the grid and join in just when he pleases. So there are still regulations applying to Heidfeld, even though, in fact, you can see now they're pulling him back down the grid and they'll push him in the end of the pit lane.
This is the man who was the European Formula 3000 champion last year, and here we are at the Variante Alta. This is where they start to drop downhill to the double 90-degree left at the Rivazza, which they approach at 185 miles an hour. We're with Rubens Barrichello at the moment, David Coulthard's McLaren in front of him. So it's The silver McLaren Mercedes leading the field, Mika Häkkinen, then the scarlet Ferrari of Michael Schumacher. The silver McLaren in front of us there is David Coulthard, and we are back again with Rubens Barrichello.
Talk on the grid. I don't know if you mentioned it in the programme while I was watching, while I was wandering around the grid itself, but we're talking that it's raining in Milan, and they're expecting rain before the end of this race.
Yeah, I hesitated to say that after what I'd said in Brazil. But yes, there was even talk of rain at 2 o'clock, and it's 2 minutes past 2 Italian time at the moment. And certainly a forecast that it's going to rain later today, but how much later, I don't know.
Now, the left-hand side of the grid, if you did happen to see our onboard lap going around the track here, the left-hand side of the grid is the racing line and should have significantly more grip. So the two McLarens are first and third on the grid, two Ferraris second and fourth. Theoretically, the McLarens should have a better bite from the track to be getting away into this race.
Johnny Herbert in the second Jaguar, 17th on the grid. There's Jenson Button, behind him Alexander Wurz as we go down the grid. Ralf Schumacher, Frentzen, Eddie Irvine in the top Jaguar is 7th on the grid. That's a very good position for him. Johnny Herbert, as ever, has had all the trouble that the Jaguar team have been having, and it's a 62-lap race. It's going to last over an hour and a half, and it's going to be absolutely crucial for the World Championship.
Curiously, Michael Schumacher's positioned his Ferrari pointing slightly right.
That's it, away they go. Good one, Häkkinen, good one, Schumacher, and Rubens Barrichello is alongside David Coulthard. It looks to me as though he's going ahead, but Michael Schumacher fighting for position, and Barrichello has got ahead of David Coulthard, and that is a real strike for Ferrari. So it's McLaren, Ferrari, Ferrari, McLaren. David Coulthard ducking and diving, and Jacques Villeneuve has come up extremely well from 9th on the grid to 5th in the race. He's in front of both the yellow Jordans, who are fighting each other as they go round the Tosa, the left-hander, and climb up towards the Piratella. So Barrichello, Coulthard, and the rest of them streaming through.
Yes, Michael Schumacher slow off the line and was very, very aggressive to Coulthard, and that's eventually put Coulthard behind his teammate too. So Michael sweeping across the racetrack and into Tosa. The two Jordans very nearly made contact, but Häkkinen out front, pulling away already. And Michael Schumacher, look at the gap back now to Barrichello. That's going to be a headache for Coulthard and the following pack, because there really is very few overtaking opportunities on this racetrack.
So Mika Häkkinen has got the advantage at the present moment, and both the Ferrari in the front and the McLaren behind it are pulling away from their teammates. There's a discernible gap developing, and that's Marc Genet going ahead of Johnny Herbert, and Michael Schumacher has actually closed the gap on Mika Häkkinen a bit. Remember what we were saying earlier on as Nick Heidfeld joins the race, what we were saying earlier on about strategy, tyres, the amount of time it takes for fuel is going to be very important in this race. Probably a two-stop strategy for the leading cars, and at the present moment, totally expected, what I expected. Mika Häkkinen got away better than Michael Schumacher. Look at the gap that's developing between them. Rubens Barrichello, followed by David Coulthard, followed by Jacques Villeneuve. Superb start. Then the two Jordans, behind them is Eddie Irvine.
The guy who really got a rocket start was Ralf Schumacher, actually, but he's now down in 9th place. He had to take to the grass. His brother pushed Coulthard wide, and Ralf was the net loser, especially in that one. Hopefully we'll get a replay of that start. There was a lot of action for us to have a look at.
And of course I'm going to be watching Jenson Button. He started 18th on the grid. He finished the first lap in 17th position, and we've still got a long, long way to go. Barrichello, Coulthard, they're pulling away from Villeneuve, and behind Villeneuve is Jarno Trulli. Here's the start.
Now here's the start. Look at Michael Schumacher snaking across, gets in front of Coulthard. Coulthard has to lift out. Ralf Schumacher on the grass and gives Barrichello the run. He so nearly took Michael, actually. Now Barrichello jumps on the throttle, look, squeezes Coulthard wide, and then he has the position.
Sensational start for Jacques Villeneuve too. Over the line, and Michael Schumacher is now faster than Mika Häkkinen. by just 1/10 of a second at this stage of the race as line astern they come over to complete another lap. They're on their third lap now out of 62. Mika Häkkinen leading the Ferrari by 1 second, and the fastest lap by Michael Schumacher, which we've just had, will have closed that gap a bit. The fastest lap last year was 1:28.54 by Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari, and last year, of course, Michael Schumacher was not in the... so, there he goes, down the descent to the Rivazza again.
It's the last part of Acqua Minerale, actually, and we have a Minardi off. It's Mazzacani.
Mazzacani, sorry.
Yeah, Mazzacani off the road. He will have stalled the engine, so he will be out of the race. He cannot rejoin the race. Now, Mika Häkkinen, this is Mazzacani running wide. Let's see which corner that is. It's one of the chicanes. I think it's Villeneuve chicane. He arrived altogether wrong in that one, was never going to make the exit. So that's Mazzacani out of the way. I wonder if he has managed to keep the engine going at all.
Yeah,
now
he's right in the way at the moment. Look at him. He tried to restart. They must get him off the track.
The engine's running. The engine is running. Can you hear it? There he goes.
Yep, right, away he goes. Now, lap 4 then. 62-lap race. Still a second between Häkkinen and Schumacher. Here are Barrichello and Coulthard. Then it's Villeneuve and Trulli. Frentzen in the yellow car, Eddie Jordan behind him, then it's Ralf Schumacher, Mika Salo. 11th position is Jos Verstappen. Here are the lead.
If you spin your car and the marshals push you out of the way, you are allowed to continue in the race if you were presumed to be in a dangerous position. So Mazzacani will be okay, but he's running plumb last. This is, you're on board with Barrichello. Look, Michael Schumacher, too much wheel spin, realised it, moved across to cut off Coulthard. Barrichello getting a fabulous run right down the outside, and really should have stayed on it there. I think he could have taken Michael too. But this was the good bit, keeping on the gas, squeezing out the competitors.
And Mika Häkkinen is replying to Michael Schumacher's challenge now as the McLaren and the Ferrari extend their lead. He's just done the fastest first sector of all. I remind you again that this track, like all the others, split up into 3 sections for timing purposes. And Jacques Villeneuve is holding his 5th position. You're looking now at Frentzen, followed by Irvine, followed by Ralf Schumacher, so that's the Jaguar. Of Eddie Irvine in 8th position, ahead of the Williams BMW, as through the last chicane, just before the start and finish straight, go the 2 leaders, and it's getting mighty close at the back.
Slow Jordan there, whether he just made a mistake and got shuffled to the outside, or whether he's got some kind of problem. Let's see Irvine and Ralf Schumacher through. We're missing a Jordan. Here we go now. Locks a wheel, runs wide, maybe he just lost track position, so we'll watch to see. No, Frentzen is in the pits. Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the pits.
Well, I think that Rubens Barrichello is holding David Coulthard up, because there's a gap developing all the time. There's 7 seconds now between them as Heinz-Harald Frentzen sits in the pit lane. I'm looking down to see if I can see him. Sadly, yes, I can. I can just see him sitting in the Jordan. As there goes Pedro de la Rosa, and Frentzen is getting out of the car, so he is retiring from the San Marino Grand Prix. Tough luck for Jordan, because they'd worked their way up to 3rd with Williams. There he is, worked their way up to 3rd with Williams in the Constructors' Championship as a result of their success in Brazil. 3rd and 4th places there to Frentzen and Trulli. Mika Häkkinen leads, Michael Schumacher 2nd. Look at that gap, look at it now, that's Barrichello. Then there's Coulthard, then there's that long gap to Villeneuve. Behind Villeneuve is Trulli. So up into 7th place has gone Eddie Irvine. There's Ralf Schumacher in 8th position. Behind him is Mika Salo. Behind Mika Salo is Jos Verstappen. So one of the arrows is up into 10th position, and Michael Schumacher is increasing his speed. New fastest lap, 1:28.9. That's just 4/10 of a second off last year's lap, the fastest lap, which was put up by Michael Schumacher as well, as we look down a clear track. So we've got McLaren versus Ferrari, Ferrari versus McLaren, BAR, there it is, Villeneuve versus Jordan. The Jaguar going well in 7th place, a gap before Ralf Schumacher in the Williams BMW. Salo followed by Verstappen. In 11th place is Ricardo Zonta in the next BAR, Pedro Diniz in the second Sauber. And coming round at the back, Giancarlo Fisichella, that you saw talking to Louise earlier on, and he's down in 19th position. Something looks very wrong indeed with the Benetton. His teammate Alexander Wurz is 4 places ahead of him in 15th place. Leaders down to the Rivazza, and off goes the other, or is it Mazzacane again? I can't tell you. No, it's Genet this time. Marc Genet, and I think Jenson Button is in there somewhere as well. So Mazzacane has gone off and rejoined the track in the Minardi. Genet has just gone off, and he was with Jenson Button. So, completion, look at this. Schumacher is closing. The gap was previously just over a second. Now it's just under a second. Not very much to close, but here is the battle again between the 3rd and 4th cars. Oh, there, Jenson Button out of the race. So he failed to finish in his first race in Australia, notwithstanding the fact that he got up to 4th place. He had a fine drive to his first World Championship point in Brazil. He's out of the San Marino Grand Prix, and I suspect that he and Genet had a coming together while they were fighting for 17th position. And look how close it is. You see, Barrichello is 10 seconds behind the race leader. David Coulthard is right behind Barrichello. Then there's a 4-second gap to Villeneuve, and only 5 seconds covers the next 6 places.
There's really only one place to overtake around here. It's a few corners time down into Rivazza, but you've got to be super committed, and the other guy's really got to know you're coming and accept the fact, otherwise he'll turn in on you. So Coulthard, he really critical stage of the race for him. It's way too early to start changing your pit stop strategy to try and ease him past this Ferrari, but David left himself a little bit of a gap a couple of laps ago and immediately came back at Barrichello over half a second faster. Louise is with Frentzen.
Heinz Harald, first man out of the race, tell us why.
Well, I had a gear shift select problem. I was stuck in 6th gear, and I couldn't shift down anymore, and I had to come into the pits. There was no chance, really.
It's been a bit of a problem for Jordan so far this year, the gearbox, isn't it? It's taken you a while to get on top of it.
Well, certainly we have some difficulties, but the problem we had in Melbourne had nothing to do with the problem today. And in Melbourne, it was just a hydraulic leak. Well, just caused by an exhaust temperature to melt the hydraulic pipe, which was a problem only with mounting this thing. But here we have, for the first time, something. We have to look first, to be honest. I don't know what is the problem here.
Well, bad luck for today, but good luck with the birth of your new child.
Well, you watch Rubens Barrichello in 3rd position with David Coulthard behind him. And the gap from Barrichello to Häkkinen, the race leader, is now some 10 seconds. I think if only David Coulthard could get past the Ferrari, he could pull away from it. But Rubens Barrichello, quite understandably, is not making room for him to do that. And on this circuit, it's very difficult to pass unless you get cooperation from the man in front. That may be all right if you're coming up to lap someone, but if you're fighting for track position the way Barrichello is, there is no way you're going to move.
While Heinz-Harald Frentzen was talking to Louise, you probably saw the replay of Jenson Button's incident. His engine blew up and he drove off the racetrack. Genet spun on the oil of that broken BMW engine just behind him. So not a mistake there by Jenson Button. It looked like a mechanical failure in the engine department.
It looks to me as though the race is just settling down a bit. Remember that Mika Häkkinen has got the pressure on him. He hasn't scored in Australia, he hasn't scored in Brazil. Michael Schumacher won both races. He's got 20 points in his pocket, whereas Häkkinen has got none. Michael Schumacher can afford to settle for 2nd place, and he will be keeping Häkkinen under pressure all the time. Mika has got to stay cool, get his lines right, make sure he brakes in the right places, accelerates in the right places, takes the tail enders at the right time, hopefully so that he can put one between himself and Michael Schumacher. That's Barrichello and Coulthard 3rd and 4th. And the gap is increasing now, something like half a second a lap between Häkkinen, who is leading, and Barrichello, who is in 3rd place, and therefore Coulthard, who is in 4th place. 5th is Villeneuve, 6th is Trulli, 7th is Irvine, 8th is Ralf Schumacher, 9th is Mika Salo, top 10, Jos Verstappen. And news from James Allen in the pits.
Yeah, just looking at the figures here, the lap times, that kind of thing, trying to work out what everybody's doing. It looks to me, obviously, as though Häkkinen and Michael Schumacher are on the same strategy, and their lap times very much consistent with a 2-stopper, expecting them to come in sometime around lap 24 to 26. And obviously, the timing of those stops is going to be critical. You might see one of them running a little bit longer than the other. Behind them, however, Rubens Barrichello is being dropped about a second a lap, and that too consistent with a guy who's got a bit more fuel on board, which is what Michael Schumacher did here last year. He started with a one-stop fuel load, and I think that's what Rubens is doing. The critical point of this race then, guys, is going to be the mid-phase between lap 32 and 45, when the 2-stoppers start coming in again. That's when Rubens is going to have to play his role to help Michael get back out in front of Häkkinen.
Häkkinen has just done 2 consecutive fastest laps of the race. He's now down to 1:28.2 and edging away from Michael 3 or 4 tenths per lap. Mika is very, very happy that he went for the softer tyre yesterday. He was looking at the sky. We were all a bit chilly, wearing a jacket down there in the paddock earlier on. He said, I've got the right tyres. I'm really excited about this afternoon. I think I've made the right choice, because it's nowhere near as warm as we all expected yesterday.
I'm not going to be very popular for what I'm about to say, but there's little doubt in my mind that the first 2 races of the year were lost by McLaren rather than won by Ferrari. Yes, Ferrari won, and they won nobly by finishing, and the McLarens didn't. But the McLarens were handling beautifully, they were quicker. Remember, Häkkinen had the lead, and that's what he's got now. And if this car is reliable, I think Mika Häkkinen, even at this early stage of the race, where on lap 10 out of 62, is looking very strong for his first victory and 10 points of the year. But he's coming up now to Mazzacane, the man we saw go off earlier on. I expect the Argentine driver will be keeping his eye on the mirrors very carefully. If he's not and he holds Mika Häkkinen up, this could be Michael Schumacher's opportunity to close up on the McLaren. The gap between them now is 1.6 seconds. There is Pedro Diniz, and going through on the inside to take Pedro de la Rosa is Jean Alesi in the Prost. He's moved up to 12th position, and Häkkinen is past Mazzacane, who tours almost on the left in order to allow Michael Schumacher to get past as well. And lap 11, 51 to go. Down to the Ravazza for the 11th time go the race leaders, and there is 14 seconds now between Barrichello in 3rd position and Mika Häkkinen, the race leader. And Barrichello has still got David Coulthard virtually attached to his rear wing, so we've got 2 racers at the front, as Ricardo Zonta in the BAR goes through and takes Jos Verstappen and 10th position. So both the BARs are now in 10th position, and Jenson Button is out of the race. It was his first San Marino Grand Prix. There's the 2 arrows together, and it's Ricardo Zonta's first race in the San Marino Grand Prix, because last year, you will remember, he hurt himself in Brazil and did not compete in this race because Salo did for him.
Yes, Verstappen is ailing, I think. We've seen 2 or 3 cars pass him on this lap alone. I think you're right. In fact, Verstappen pits as we speak. So Verstappen with some kind of technical drama and into the pit there. And you said both the BARs are in 10th place. I think you meant in the top 10, Mary.
In the top, I'm sorry, yes. In the top 10. Zonta is in 10th position. Jacques Villeneuve in 5th position as a result of that meteoric start of his. We're looking down on the arrows of Jos Verstappen. Obviously some sort of problem with the right front brake or suspension. It's suspension. They're trying the bottom wishbone.
Yes, remember, this is the car that had 2 failures on the same lap. Both cars out on the same lap of the first race of the year with steering or front suspension failure.
Now, Pedro Diniz there has got Jean Alesi behind him, who is streaking up through the field, and he's challenging now for 11th position. 13 out of 62 at Imola for the San Marino Grand Prix. It looks as though we have another retirement because Jos Verstappen in the Arrows has come into the pits, and we've seen that he's got some kind of a suspension problem. Mika Häkkinen there, still leading the race. Now a discernible gap of 1.7 seconds between him and the first Ferrari of Michael Schumacher. Then it's Barrichello third, Coulthard fourth, Jacques Villeneuve still in fifth position, but right up behind him is Jarno Trulli-Jordan, the only one that's left because Frentzen is out. Eddie Irvine is running in the Jaguar in seventh place, ahead of Ralf Schumacher, who started fifth and is down to eighth. Mika Salo is ninth, Zonta is 10th, and Louise Goodman has news.
I'm standing here with Jenson Button, actually, Murray. Jenson, we saw you off into the gravel trap earlier. Was there a problem with the car, or was it a mistake?
And as I turned into the left part of the second chicane, it just locked, the rear wheels just locked, loads of smoke out the back. It felt like an engine failure, but I'm not going to say anything too much yet. But there you go.
You don't seem really to have got to grips with this track. You've not had a really good weekend, have you?
This morning it actually got a lot better. I was 11th in practice this morning, and I think we were looking good for the race. We had a good setup for pit stops, I think, and I was in a good position then for a good result. But there you go, it happens.
Silverstone next up, we'll see you there.
Oh yes.
A very realistic response and attitude from Jenson Button. He's now a very, very famous man in Britain, and everybody's expecting miracles from him, but this is, after all, his first Grand Prix season. 20 years old, he's learning all the time, and he certainly learned at Imola how you have to attack the curbs. You can't get round this circuit quickly unless you do. Mika Häkkinen, that you're watching, is of course a master of this. He was saying yesterday that you've got to get the curbs absolutely right. That's Barrichello third, David Coulthard fourth, still very close to each other. And Häkkinen was saying, if you attack too much, you go off. If you don't attack enough, you lose time. So he is certainly gaining time. He's nearly 2 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher now. They're lapping about 3/10 of a second differently, with Häkkinen the faster. But it's still McLaren, Ferrari. Ferrari, McLaren. The BAR of Jacques Villeneuve in fifth position. And look at Mika Häkkinen, the way he's throwing that McLaren about.
Well, it's exactly what you were just talking about, and certainly Jenson didn't get hooked up on those curbs, and as you rightly said, it really is a question of attack and be very, very aggressive, but know the limit. Let the car fly a little bit, but be ready for when it lands, and it is really quite an art around this racetrack, and Coulthard needs to pass that Ferrari, otherwise his afternoon is wrecked.
Yeah, Coulthard is close enough to Barrichello, of course, for the pit stop to make all the difference. This is Barrichello that we're riding with now, and right up close behind us there is the McLaren. But Mika Häkkinen is looking better and better all the time in comparison with Michael Schumacher in terms of relative positions at pit stops. If Häkkinen comes in before Schumacher, of course Schumacher will pass, but if the Finn's pit stop turns out to be the quicker, it could be very, very close indeed for the lead when Michael Schumacher rejoins. Now we're on lap 15 out of 62 at the present moment. If they're both on two-stop strategies, which we believe they are, they'll be coming in about 9 laps time, and you can expect a stop of round about 8 seconds. When I say stop, I mean with the car stationary. They're going to lose a lot more time than that, of course, going into the pit lane and slowing down. There is now a maximum speed of 80 kilometers an hour in the pit lane on race day. That is very slow indeed. But at Silverstone, remember, when they've got to have new electronic systems in their cars, the drivers are going to be in charge of slowing down. At the present moment, they press a button and it's done electronically. And I'm expecting to see from Silverstone onwards quite a few penalties, 10-second penalties, plus the time to slow down and speed up for overshooting the mark in terms of speed in the pit lane, but not today.
Coulthard is better under braking. His car's working better under braking than Barrichello's Ferrari, which would also suggest Barrichello's carrying a bit more lard in his fuel tank. But Coulthard can't stay anywhere near him under acceleration away from the corners, and struggling with traction, getting the rear tyres hooked up to the racetrack is David Coulthard, it's clear to see.
Now, as you watch Barrichello third, Coulthard fourth, I can tell you that the leaders, Häkkinen and Schumacher, are lapping at just a whisker over 1 minute 28. The third and fourth men that you're looking at are lapping at about 1.5 seconds slower than that, as a result of which the gap between Häkkinen, who is leading, and Barrichello and Coulthard, who are third and fourth, is just a whisker over 20 seconds. That's after 15 laps. Now, I don't think that signifies that Barrichello is necessarily on a different pit stop strategy than Michael Schumacher and Mika Häkkinen, but it just might do.
I think this is just going to be a slow-mo replay showing you just how hard the front suspension and tyres are working over those curbs of Ruben Barrichello's Ferrari, and both the leaders now in the 1 minute 27s, and again Häkkinen is a tenth faster. I think we're seeing, although Ferrari are way ahead in the World Championship, it may seem a strange thing to say, but I do believe that Häkkinen's McLaren has been the fastest car now of all of the first 3 races. But it's Michael that's come through and grabbed the points.
Yeah, retirement so far. Heinz-Harald Frentzen out very early in the race. Marc Genet out in the Minardi as a result of some sort of confrontation with Jenson Button, who is out in the Williams BMW. Jos Verstappen out in the Arrows, and both Minardis are out because Gaston Mazzacane was out, and that means there are 17 drivers left out of the 22 who started. The last on the track at the moment is Nick Heidfeld. He is in 17th position in the Prost. That is Mika Häkkinen. Look back, there is Michael Schumacher. No doubt about which is fastest now. It is this man, it's the Finn, Mika Häkkinen, the winner of 14 Grand Prix in his career. This is his 131st, and he's coming through now. He's completed his 17th lap, and in the background there, in the green Jaguar, is Johnny Herbert, and he is chasing Alexander Wurtz's Benetton. They are respectively 15th Johnny Herbert and 14th Alexander Wurtz. Now, Eddie Irvine is still holding 7th position, so the Jaguars, which have been plagued with unreliability in the earlier races, and particularly Johnny Herbert's, are running well at the moment. Lap 18 out of 62. And look at this. This is Villeneuve battling with Jarno Trulli for 5th position.
Yes, Villeneuve really under pressure there, and knowing it, going very, very early to cover his line, which compromises his entry to that first Tamburello chicane quite badly. Now he's going to turn into a chicane that carries his name, but it's named after his father, of course, Gilles Villeneuve. 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th, because 7th in the green Jaguar is Eddie Irvine. 8th in the white Williams BMW is Ralf Schumacher with the yellow flash on his helmet. Behind him is Mika Salo. So 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th pretty close to each other on the circuit. We're on lap 18. Mika Häkkinen is going faster again. He's got the gap up to 2.6 seconds now. Over the crest. Yeah, I was just thinking, if he was an Englishman, he'd be called Jack Newtown, wouldn't he? I don't know if they'd have named a chicane after him.
There's an interesting fact. And here is Jarno Trulli, who is in 6th place. Now, this is the drop down to the Rivat, so they're doing 185 miles an hour as they brake for the first left-hander. A bit of a squirt down to the second left-hander, take the apex at about 80 miles an hour, accelerate up to 180 at an enormous velocity. And Jarno Trulli, the man that Eddie Jordan was talking about so confidently and with such praise, and we're riding with now as we go into the start and finish straight, up towards the Tamburello at 175 miles an hour. Back off a bit for the left, right again. Accelerate up to 135 miles an hour. Now 185 miles an hour to the second chicane at Villeneuve. Right, left, right. Hard on the brakes, 80 miles an hour for one of the most acute corners on the circuit, Tosa, and this is where the circuit starts to climb, up towards the Piratella. Under the bridge, there left, there's Eddie Irvine holding on to that 7th position. And the times, obviously, actually Eddie Irvine is catching Jarno Trulli. He's got the gap down to 0.6 of a second. This is the man who was 2nd in the World Championship for Ferrari last year. won 4 races for the Maranello concern, Barrichello and David Coulthard, and they are closing up on Mazzacane, who will move over again.
Yes, Mazzacane having rejoined the race, as has Jos Verstappen in the Arrow, so we're back to 19 runners now.
Lap 20, I can tell you that the Prost mechanics are in the pit lane, either for Nick Heidfeld, who is in 17th position, or no, it's Sean Alesi, who is 12th. He was a couple of seconds behind Pedro Diniz, and his car is assaulted by about 20 mechanics who rip off the tyres and wheels, holding up the lollipop to tell him not to sprint out until everything is ready, which he now does, remembering to actuate his pit lane speed limiter, which he won't be able to do at Silverstone. And here is Mika Häkkinen completing his 20th lap. Now, it's crucial that he should increase that gap as much as he can, and that Michael Schumacher should reduce it. There he is, as much as he can. It's 3 seconds now, because if we are right, it's going to be about 4 laps before one or other of them comes in. That is assuming that they're on the sort of intervals we expect for a 2-stop strategy. But these days, people produce such unexpected strategies, particularly Ross Brawn of Ferrari, that I can't be sure. Oh, and there is a stop-go penalty for Nick Heidfeld, so that won't help him. He was down in 17th position. He was the last man to be on the same lap as the leader, and he was 82 seconds behind Mika Häkkinen, as Michael Schumacher comes plummeting round the corner. And I think we're getting definite confirmation here that certainly the McLaren, as it was in Australia, as it was in Brazil, is the quicker car. One-third of the way through the San Marino Grand Prix. We are now on lap 22 out of 62 as you look at Villeneuve, followed by Trulli and Irvine.
Irvine's got some kind of problem. The shot before was Irvine behind Salo, so Irvine coming up the hill there looks like he ran out of gear shiftability or something like that. So Eddie Irvine slipping back down now to at least 9th position.
Well, we believe the Jaguar to be pretty quick given the opportunity, but it hasn't had much opportunity because it's had so much unreliability this year. Johnny Herbert is in 14th position. You've just seen Eddie Irvine lose at least one place, with Ralf Schumacher going past in the Williams. He is now in 7th position. Salo has passed Irvine, who is dropping down through the field. He's only got Zonta 6 seconds behind him now, and if he's got a problem, he's going to slip down and down the field and probably come into the pits. Rubens Barrichello in the Ferrari, hanging on 3rd position ahead of David Coulthard. David Coulthard, of course, who won here in 1998, finished 2nd here last year to Michael Schumacher. And the German is 3.3 seconds behind Mika Häkkinen. But as I say that, I see that probably Michael Schumacher's got the message that pit stops are imminent, because he's on a charge now, fastest first sector of the afternoon.
Jaguar mechanics in the pit lane too, but Eddie Irvine is now back up to in agreement in the Heidfeld there with his stop and go penalties, what you saw coming through the pits. But the Jaguar ready. Eddie Irvine did have a problem, but he's actually back up to speed in the first sector, a bit tardy in the middle of the lap. So clearly Irvine's still carrying some kind of drama. Mechanics are ready for him if indeed there's anything they can do.
Well, we are all keeping a weather eye on the pit lane. James Allen is down there. And James, as I say, that has got some news for us.
Yeah, very interesting time this, Murray, in the build-up to the first stops. And I tell you, there's a very intensive discussion been going on between Luca Baldesseri, who is Michael Schumacher's race engineer, and Ross Brawn, of course, the strategist at Ferrari. They're trying to dream up a clever trick now to get Michael ahead of Häkkinen. As far as I see it, they have two options. They can either short fill him, put in less fuel than Häkkinen's going to put in, which means that when Häkkinen comes after his pit stop, Michael will be ahead of him, or they can long fill him, which is what they did last year, and then he could do a longer second stint. For sure they're going to try something here. They don't want to sit behind Häkkinen all day, but as you and Martin have been saying, there's no question here this weekend the McLaren is the faster car, so an uphill struggle for them for sure.
The McLaren is the faster car if it's got Mika Häkkinen at the wheel. It's not if it's got David Coulthard, because you see, David, even if he is in a faster car, is not got the superior speed enough to get past Barrichello.
That's Verstappen carrying out a stop-and-go penalty for blocking. As you can see yourself, they're not allowed to touch the car. If he needs tyres or fuel, he's got to come in again. You're not allowed to do it. You stop at your own box, 10 seconds stationary. It's going to cost you about 26, 27 seconds all told, including negotiating the pit lane. And I can only assume that's because he was blocking the leaders as he was lapped, because he's running last. He could not have been blocking another competitor.
Lap 24. Now, you watch Barrichello and David Coulthard. I'll tell you what's happening in front of and behind them. Mika Häkkinen has got Michael Schumacher in second place, 3.3 seconds behind him. There's Barrichello, who's 30 seconds behind Häkkinen. You can see where Coulthard is. Fifth is Jacques Villeneuve, 45 seconds behind the leader. In comes Trulli. Sixth is Trulli, or was, because now Ralf Schumacher's gone past him and up into the points, but not for long. Seventh is Mika Salo. Eighth was Eddie Irvine, but he's in the pits. So it will now be Pedro Diniz and Ricardo Zonta.
Truly away first. It amazes me there's not more broken legs in that pit lane as the cars pull away, especially when they sweep back in and your rear wheel cuts the arc of the corner. This is a replay of Zonta getting out of shape into one of the chicanes. Across the grass, it's the last chicane actually, and then he's going to be, that's Heidfeld finishing his dreadful weekend, parked up, and obviously a technical failure, a little bit of smoke coming from the front, but actually that is just a bit of heat soak from the brake discs and calipers. Louise, what can you tell us about Swerve and Irvine?
Well, he's just been into the pits. We saw earlier on, just before he came for that pit stop, he did lose a lot of time. He reported back to the team that he was having a misfire. So what they did, they brought him into the pit slightly earlier than he was due to come in, and they've actually switched something off, according to technical director Gary Anderson. He wouldn't be drawn further on what it was they'd switched off, but he says that he's quite confident that that's going to correct the problem. So Irv's on his way again, and fingers crossed that's the end of the problem.
I certainly can't imagine what it is, and he'd switch off to stop the misfire. Let's hope he's succeeded, though. Eddie Irvine's down to 9th position at the moment. In comes the Minardi of Mazzacane, 17th position. Heidfeld, of course, out of the race. Jos Verstappen is still running. Haven't seen him recently. That means to say that there are 18 competitors still left in the race, as Mazzacane, with the shortest pit road of all to get out of the pit lane, shoots back into the fray.
Fastest pit stop of the race last year was 23.9 seconds all told, including negotiating the lane itself by Michael Schumacher. It's a little bit slower down there this year, so we're looking at something of 24, 25 seconds total loss. Now, cars 1 and 2 on the road, Häkkinen and Schumacher already have over half a minute gap on Barrichello and Coulthard, so they've got a pit stop plus in their pockets.
Mika Häkkinen is underlining his superiority here today. Fastest lap, 1:27.38, which is 1.2 seconds faster than Michael Schumacher's fastest lap last year, and the McLaren mechanics are out in the pit lane. Now, I would imagine it's for Coulthard rather than Häkkinen, because they probably decided that if they bring Coulthard in, who clearly can't get past Barrichello, and it is. Are you there, James, or not?
I am down here, Murray, and this is going to be a very interesting one. The clock going to go on to this. It's very hard to see exactly how long it's going to be. 7, 8, 9 seconds. That's a two-stop strategy. Interesting.
Yes, and David wasn't into first gear fast enough there. For every second that the car was stationary, there's about 3.5 laps worth of fuel going in when it all shakes out. So Coulthard there with a reasonable pit stop, but definitely lost another half second before he got away.
I was working something else out at the time, but I think David has actually kept his fourth place, and that Jacques Villeneuve did not get through and take that position whilst David was still in the pit lane.
Oh, Villeneuve was only 15.6 seconds behind, so he must be ahead of him. I think, Murray, you can't stop in anything less than 24, 25 seconds, as we see another ailing Prost, which can only be a Lacey, because Heidfeld is already out of the race, and there's some long, long faces in that Prost team.
Prost are having a terrible season. They've had problems with the Peugeot engine. This is Michael Schumacher. He's now 3.7 seconds behind Mika Häkkinen, and the Jaguar there coming round the left-hander and up towards Tosa. On the tail of Wurtz's Benetton is that of Johnny Herbert, and he's ahead of Fisichella. So the Benettons are having a pretty unhappy race, because they're down in 13th and 15th positions. Now let's look at the relative speed of Johnny Herbert in the Jaguar and the Benetton, but now the Ferrari mechanics, you just saw them there, are out. Now, is this for Schumacher? Is it for Barrichello? They are second and third.
I'd have thought they're going to be responding with Barrichello's car to David Coulthard's stop. That's what I'd imagine they're going to do, is you see a Lacey sweep straight in the garage. But we're getting the information up here that Häkkinen and Schumacher will stop on the same lap. I'm not quite sure where that information's come from, but it's coming through my headphones now. And look, Ferrari and McLaren mechanics, all of them. Yes, here's Häkkinen. Now does Schumacher follow him down the pit lane? Can't see Schumacher going around the last chicane, so he must be in the pit lane somewhere. It's very, very tight entry there. Then yes, Michael Schumacher also stopping at the same time. A straight race between the mechanics. James.
It took Schumacher a lot longer to get here than I expected, and he's still there, but quite a long fill. What does the clock say, guys? How long was it?
Well, 9.9 seconds, Schumacher.
He's doing what I thought he would do. He's put more fuel in for the second stint, so it's been very interesting.
Yeah, Mika Häkkinen has gained time. He's increased his advantage as a result of that pit stop. But if James is right, and I'm sure he is, there we are. You see, he's gained 2 seconds at least on that pit stop. But Michael Schumacher has had more fuel put in the car. That is going to be very significant in the closing stages of the race. When he comes in for another stop, a new tyres, he'll be doing the end of the race on a brand new set of tyres. And at the present moment, it's still Häkkinen, Schumacher, Barrichello, Villeneuve up into 4th place, Ralf Schumacher into 5th position, Coulthard down into 6th place. The Ferrari mechanics out there waiting for Barrichello to come out. We're on lap 28 out of 62.
There's Coulthard now down into the 27s rather. Now he doesn't have to look at the back of Barrichello's Ferrari. Crucial lap now, this out lap. Neither Häkkinen nor Michael Schumacher have got any traffic ahead of them. Look, clear track ahead. So it's a question of getting back up to speed within 1 or 2 corners, really. And already now halfway around the lap, 2/3 of the way around the lap, Häkkinen should be braking exactly where he was braking before he came into the pits. You really have to condition yourself to just pick up that speed, that race speed, immediately you leave the pits.
Well, we're riding with Barrichello now in 3rd position. And I can tell you that Michael Schumacher on the new rubber is gained half a second in one sector from the leader, as in comes Barrichello, hits the pit stop speed limiter. There are the Ferrari mechanics. James.
Yeah, Rubens comes in. Now, of course, the critical thing here is we thought he was running quite a heavy fuel load, so he's come in now. They're putting a reasonable amount of fuel in. Well, 7.7 seconds. Bit difficult to tell what Rubens is up to today. Maybe he's just slow, guys.
Yeah, I think it may well be that. As I said earlier on, he couldn't get to grips with the handling of the Ferrari in the practice and qualifying sessions, nor this morning.
Ralf Schumacher there moves up to 4th because he hasn't stopped yet, but Barrichello remains ahead of Coulthard. Coulthard did not, he had a slower pit stop and was not able to gain any track position. Now Villeneuve's in the pits from what was 4th place, a realistic when it all sorts itself out after the stops, the first stops. Villeneuve's the 4th and Ralf Schumacher is 5th.
Well, looking good for McLaren with Häkkinen, not looking so good for McLaren with Coulthard. looking questionable for both Schumacher and Barrichello until we get into the later stages of the race. And now you see the Ferrari rejoining and Ralf Schumacher moving up into a higher position.
Yes, that's Schumacher going up into third. That was a replay they were just showing us. So that's third, fourth and fifth. But Ralf has yet to stop, I would reiterate.
And once again, Ralf Schumacher, well, I was going to say surprising us. He's not surprising me now. He's a lot younger than his brother. Michael is 31 years old and Ralf Schumacher is 24. But Ralf is a mighty fine driver. Give him another 5 years and he's certainly going to be up there with his brother, if not ahead of him. It's always been, funnily enough, the younger brother when there have been partnerships in Grand Prix racing, like the Stewarts and the Rodriguez brothers, who has been the faster. And in comes Ralf as I say that. You're watching the Williams BMW of Ralf Schumacher, who was in third position. Nice clean stop. No indication of the time, so I can't tell you. Rejoins. Now, let's see who... That is Villeneuve going through. So Villeneuve has got a track position advantage there over the Williams BMW of Ralf Schumacher in the background. We're on lap 30 out of 62, so as near as makes no difference, half the distance as you get that replay of the BAR and the Williams rejoining.
It's a horrible feeling when you come on the other side of that pit wall and the man you're desperately trying to get track position on flashes past. It's so frustrating and disappointing, and that's exactly what Ralf Schumacher had to watch then as Villeneuve swept through into an effective fourth position.
Lap 31, you're watching the race leader, Mika Häkkinen. Michael Schumacher is 4.5 seconds behind him on a longer pit stop. Ralf Schumacher was third, but is now gone down, and Rubens Barrichello is therefore up into third position. David Coulthard in fourth position. I can't tell you any more of the first 10 because I want to see where Ralf Schumacher is on the circuit. But all we know for sure is that Villeneuve got track advantage on him there. Well, if things stay as they are, it's 13 World Championship points in the Constructors' contest for McLaren, and it's 10 for Ferrari. And at the present moment, Ferrari are 26 points ahead of McLaren. So he's going to help McLaren, but it's not going to make all that much difference. They've got to keep chipping away at that advantage that the Ferrari team, by virtue of their superior reliability, got in Australia and in Brazil. And David Coulthard, as you can see for yourselves, in spite of the pit stops of himself and Barrichello, is back in exactly the same position as he was before. Just about 0.8 of a second between him and the third-placed Ferrari as we look at Alexander Wurz and Johnny Herbert, 12th and 13th. Now, De La Rosa is the last driver in the Arrows in 15th position to be on the same lap as the leaders. Gaston Mazzacane, who has been off, on, back again, in and out of the pits, is 16th and a lap down. Jos Verstappen, who came in for a long stop to enable the Arrows technicians to look at his suspension, is 17th and the last runner. He is 2 laps down, out of the race in order of retirement as you look at Barrichello third and Coulthard fourth. It's Heinz Harald Frentzen in the Jordan, Marc Genet in the Minardi, Jenson Button in the Williams, Nick Heidfeld in the Prost, Sean Alesi in the other Prost. So an early bath for the whole Prost team. And they need to... They'll be at Silverstone testing all this week like all the other teams, something for people to go and see, and they need to get as much reliability as they can. They haven't got much at the present moment. Lap Lap 32 at Imola, 2 laps over half distance. Here is the top 10. Mika Häkkinen leads Michael Schumacher by 5.1 seconds. Bit misleading because their times at the pit stops were very different. Rubens Barrichello third, 34 seconds behind, just ahead of David Coulthard fourth. They've both stopped. Jacques Villeneuve is in 5th position ahead of Ralf Schumacher, gained advantage on the pit stop. 7th is Mika Salo, 8th is Jarno Trulli. Eddie Irvine still running in the Jaguar in spite of that long pit stop. 9th position, Ricardo Zonta is 10th. 17 runners left, 15 are on the same lap. And out come the Jaguar mechanics for, I presume, yes, it's got to be Johnny Herbert. He has not stopped yet. Over half distance. Eddie Irvine, of course, has been in some few laps ago. You're looking at Villeneuve and Schumacher, BAR Honda and Williams BMW, and they are in 5th and 6th places, with Mika Salo in the background in the Sauber as Johnny Herbert in the Jaguar comes into the pits. Clean his visor. New set of Bridgestones go on. Out comes the Jag. There's a problem somewhere. What is it? Right? Oh no, it's just the fuel taking longer than the wheels to change.
Yes, one stopper, of course, so 12 seconds is about right. That'll see Herbert to the end of the race. And this will be a replay of the leader, Mika Häkkinen, lapping Jos Verstappen. There must have been a De La Rosa, who's 15th, actually, and Mika Häkkinen sweeping through them.
Perfect mathematical stop for Johnny Herbert. He came in as we expected on that lap 33. That's 1 lap over half distance. It took him 11 seconds, which is exactly what you would have expected. And Rubens Barrichello is still staving off David Coulthard, who cannot make the Brazilian make the mistake that David needs to get past the Ferrari.
Well, 2 teams who did well in Brazil the last Grand Prix, which is Benetton and Jordan, having an appalling afternoon. Jordan, best runner at the moment, is Trulli in 8th. Frentzen out of the race. And we've got to look down. Where have we go? The 12th for Wirtz in the Benetton and 14th for Fisichella. Absolutely nowhere. Fisichella currently 2nd in the World Championship as a driver.
Right, we've got 3 races at the front. We've got Häkkinen versus Schumacher with 4 seconds between them. We've got Barrichello versus Coulthard with just about half a second between them. And diving through on the inside goes Pedro Diniz to take 10th position from Zonta, who retakes it again. Yes. So Pedro outreached himself, dived in too fast, and now he's losing ground to Zonta, and closing up on him are Alexander Wurz. And there it is, there's a replay, you see. Pedro dived through, got onto the grass. Zonta said, thank you very much, I'll have that back again.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained. It was certainly worth a go there by Dinitz, and Mika lost about 9/10 the lap previous to this, but now has pulled another 3/10 of that back again. So Mika, I think they're yo-yoing a little bit now between Schumacher and Häkkinen as they go through the traffic.
So we're hanging on now to see whether whatever the Ferrari pit strategy is going to help them on the second stop. Now the second stop should be round about lap 43, and that is in 9 laps time.
Barrichello's been extremely serene in the Ferrari, but you have to say he's not been stunningly fast. Melbourne he looked half tidy, but in the other races I don't think he's quite, or he's not been really anywhere near the pace of Michael Schumacher in the sister car.
No, nor was Eddie Irvine, of course, last year. I mean, if Eddie got within half a second of Michael Schumacher, he reckoned he was doing about as well as he could do. Rubens Barrichello that you're looking at has been closer than that, but not here. He was 8/10 of a second off the pace for qualifying. And Michael Schumacher is not making any impression on Mika Häkkinen. Well, I tell a lie, he made a 2/10 impression on him on the last lap. But he's still 4 seconds behind Häkkinen, albeit a bit closer than he was, as Villeneuve and Ralf Schumacher there, 5th and 6th, battle on the circuit, round the Acqua Minerale bends, climbing up towards the Variante Alta. This is it, left, and accelerate away. So BMW V10 in the Williams, Honda V10 in the BAR. Both engines are new to Formula One this year. both very, very welcome indeed, because there is starting to develop in Formula One a problem with enough good engines to satisfy all the 11 teams, soon to be 12 when Toyota join.
As we cut back to the BAR, bouncing across the curbs. I was just watching Coulthard and Barrichello there together, nose to tail. Here we see it again. Touch of déjà vu for both of them, really. They were squabbling over the British Formula 3 Championship many years ago. Barrichello just nipping it at the last moment from David Coulthard.
And there's Zonta with Pedro Diniz. Pedro, of course, didn't get a drive in Brazil due to the fact that the Sauber wing broke off Mika Salo's car, and Pedro Diniz was withdrawn because it was felt to be too dangerous. And the Brazilian is certainly attacking his countryman now. Brazilian Ricardo Zonta, Brazilian Pedro Diniz. It's Zonta's first race at Imola, and as a result of Zonta holding Pedro Diniz up, which he undoubtedly is, you can see the Benetton behind closing up all the time. That's Alexander Wurz in 12th position. Behind him is teammate Fisichella. 14th is De La Rosa in the Arrows. 15th is Johnny Herbert. And then Mazzacane with a lap behind them, Jos Verstappen in 17th position. But it's getting pretty close because, look, Wurz is closing in the Benetton all the time on the car in front of him. Hello, a bit of a problem here.
I think that's Diniz,
yes,
still
Diniz
all over Zonta like a bad suit, and Diniz really has a much, much faster car. Zonta appears to be struggling to slow down, but as we saw, he just couldn't make the move stick when it came to it.
Well, Mika Häkkinen certainly seems to have this race by the throat, although Michael Schumacher is consistently faster in the first sector of this circuit. Häkkinen invariably gets it back in the later two sectors, and the gap is up to 4.5 seconds now. But Ferrari are still in those strong second and third places, and Michael Schumacher, of course, would get 6 points for the World Championship if he finishes in second place. James is in that area, I think.
Well, it may look a bit dull on the track at the moment, I tell you, this is such a finely balanced motor race. It's really fantastic. Both Mika Häkkinen and Michael Schumacher pushing to the limit. And Häkkinen's going to need all of these 4.5 seconds, because I reckon he's going to stop around about lap 43. But I think Michael Schumacher has the fuel to go for about 5 or possibly even 6 laps more. And of course, his second stop will be shorter in terms of time because he'll be putting less fuel in than Häkkinen. So unless Häkkinen can get a few more seconds lead, this race will be won on the second fuel stop. Could be very interesting.
Well, he's not getting it at the moment, James. Thanks for that. They're on lap 38. So there's another 5 laps before we expect Mika Häkkinen to come in. Another 11 laps before we expect Michael Schumacher to come in. So it looks as though it's going to be a mighty close finish to the San Marino Grand Prix at this circuit, which has seen so much excitement and drama over the years. Pedro Diniz still chasing Ricardo Zonta as they plunge down to the Rivazza, break from 185 miles an hour down to about 80 miles an hour. Alexander Wurz not closing. Fisichella has been lapped in now in the Benetton. He's 13 seconds behind this fight that you're seeing now, but Häkkinen is closing on all of them. Now, Zonta and Diniz and Wurz are occupied with each other. Diniz is trying to get past Zonta, Wurz is trying to catch Diniz, and none of them will be paying much attention to their mirrors. They'll be watching the car ahead, and this could enable Michael Schumacher to close that gap on Mika Häkkinen. This it could be absolutely critical.
One of those Benettons has got to come in for a stop soon. Neither Benetton have yet stopped. Remember, they went 51 laps into the Brazilian Grand Prix, demonstrating both the size of their fuel tank and the economy of their Supertech engine. And Michael has put a sprint on. He took 0.8 of a second. There's a lot of gravel. Somebody's been off the road. It's Zonta finally outbraked himself, and Mika Häkkinen is through, and Michael Schumacher now has to clear those two before Piratella. Zonta going off in Villeneuve. He's been looking like an accident, looking for somewhere to happen for a few laps, and there it finally is.
Well, maybe that's turned to Mika Häkkinen's advantage. There is the Finn on his 39th lap. 4 laps to go before he stops, if we are right. Now he's up to Alexander Wurz, who is in 12th position with Zonta ahead. So Schumacher is past.
Yes, Michael only lost 0.4 of a second in the middle sector there. passing the yellow car, but he still yet has to clear Zonta. Zonta's still sideways everywhere.
And moves, stays right, lets Michael Schumacher through. Good bit of driving there. He spotted the Scarlet Ferrari in his mirrors, and now he's got Mazzacane, but Mazzacane is a lap behind him, so not a danger in terms of track position. In comes Alexander Wurz.
Good news for Hakkinen. Wurz was his next target to be lapped, so that makes it slightly easier for Hakkinen through the traffic, and now effectively they've cleared all of those three that were having a squabble.
The gap is up. The gap is up to nearly 5 seconds. Hakkinen has benefited from that. Lap 40, this is 2/3 distance, and still the Ferrari of Barrichello and the McLaren Mercedes of David Coulthard are as close to each other on the circuit as they have been all through the afternoon. And remember, they've both been in and made a pit stop, which didn't affect their positions on the track at all. They're 40 seconds behind the flying Mika Hakkinen, who at the moment is looking good for his 15th Grand Prix victory in his career of 131 Grand Prix races. Michael Schumacher is getting pretty close to being the second highest point scorer of all time. He's on 6 World Championship points at the present moment, and he'll be on 596 if he finishes this race. And Ayrton Senna, the great Ayrton Senna, scored 614 to be the second highest of all time, behind Alain Prost. Barrichello, Coulthard at the Variante Alta. Down again towards the Rivazza, underneath the bridge. And Mika Hakkinen is on his 41st lap. Now, James has hypothesised that Hakkinen is going to come in round about lap 43. That's 2 laps from now. And that Michael Schumacher will be in 6 laps later. Now, Hakkinen is cutting his way through the field magnificently. Michael Schumacher is doing no less well. And one of the Arrows mechanics, they probably had a very late night's work, and it's very, very tiring.
Just studying the back of his eyelids, I think, very intently there. This is the battle for 3rd place, and Coulthard appears to have absolutely nowhere to go to get past Rubens Barrichello.
Lap 41. Lap 41 out of 62, no changes at the front at the present moment. It is still McLaren, Ferrari, McLaren, Hakkinen, Schumacher, Barrichello, Coulthard. But there could be, because we're getting towards the point when Mika Hakkinen there, who has just passed Pedro Diniz and lapped the 10th place man, is coming in.
Yes, but Michael Schumacher a full 1 second faster on the last lap. You can see it for yourself now. A new fastest lap of 27.1, 1.4 seconds faster than last year's best lap. So Schumacher now putting in a charge. You can see the traffic ahead of him, and the Benetton having had 2 stabs at getting away there at Fisichella, and Michael now beginning to apply his traditional late race pressure. But as we've seen before, Mika Hakkinen is usually more than up to it.
Yeah, Ross Brawn will probably, who is the Ferrari technical director and the strategical guru, will probably have told Michael Schumacher that Mika Hakkinen is due to come in soon. So loud pedal, Michael, and lots of it. Cut the gap, and you could take the lead after your second stop in 6 laps time after Mika Hakkinen. That's my surmise. We'll wait for time to tell whether I'm right or wrong. No change 3rd, Barrichello. No change 4th, David Coulthard. Villeneuve is still 5th. 8/10 of a second behind him is Ralf Schumacher in the Williams BMW 6. Salo is 7th, Trulli is 8th, Eddie Irvine Jaguar is 9th, Pedro Diniz is 10th and has been lapped.
Yes, I would think Coulthard, he's yo-yoing up and up to the back of Barrichello from time to time, but with the turbulent air coming off the back of the Ferrari, that's just about as close as you can get around here. And what's going to frustrate Coulthard when he sees the video of this race, and all of the drivers study the videos very, very carefully to see what they can learn of the opposition. What's going to frustrate him is it was Michael Schumacher's tardy wheel-spinning start that ended up putting him behind Rubens Barrichello. And look how close now Michael Schumacher is to Mika Häkkinen. Mika Häkkinen's lost a lot of time in the first section here, just about 3 seconds. He clearly had to follow Diniz for an awful long time.
And Michael Schumacher's now got to follow Diniz. Is the Brazilian going to move over?
Oh, did he make a mistake? He passed Diniz on the previous lap, didn't he? So Diniz caught Häkkinen too. So did Mika Häkkinen make a mistake? And there's Michael having to lock a brake as well. But did Häkkinen make a mistake, or has he got a little drama?
Well, I don't know, but you're absolutely right. That gap is a lot less than 3.4 seconds. And remember, Mika Häkkinen is going to be coming in very shortly. Michael Schumacher will be staying out, and he will be really applying the pressure then to increase the gap over himself and Mika Häkkinen enough to enable him to hold the lead when he comes out of the pits after his second stop. We're on lap 43.
Yes, that locking up his wheels, trying not to run into the back of Diniz, cost Michael Schumacher 1.1 seconds in the middle of the lap that they're currently on. Right, Häkkinen over the line. 129.7. Michael Schumacher still 0.7 of a second faster. The gap down to 2.6. I'd like to see a replay and see if Häkkinen just made a mistake. His car looks fine, sounds fine, but I don't know why he lost so much time on the last lap.
Neither do I, but it could be the thing that decided the race. I say it could be. We've still got some time to go. This is lap 44, 62-lap race. You're looking at the two leaders who are 43 seconds ahead of the battle for third position. And it is still Häkkinen, McLaren, Schumacher, Ferrari, Barrichello, Ferrari, David Coulthard, who is very close indeed to the Ferrari as he exits and starts another lap and comes up towards the Tamburello.
It's a strange thing, but when you follow a car like this for so long, as Coulthard now has for 43 laps, they're on their 44th, you get mesmerised. You end up just matching your pace to the car in front. Sometimes you drop back and try and get out of that bad rhythm that you're into. And McLaren mechanics are out in the pit lane looking out of the window here. So McLaren mechanics getting ready for what I would imagine should be a second scheduled stop for one of their two drivers.
Yeah, and Fisichella is about to be lapped by the flying cars behind them.
Häkkinen's in the pits, Murray. Häkkinen's in the pits. The crowd are going mad out here. Michael Schumacher takes the lead of the race. Häkkinen now looks like a regular stop. As James pointed out, the Ferrari had more fuel in it. The car goes down very, very quickly, and away it goes. So great pit stop there. 8.3 seconds for Mika Häkkinen.
8.3 seconds. Now we're into the bit of the race that really matters as Mika Häkkinen sprints out of the pit lane. Michael Schumacher has taken the lead. Michael Schumacher will know that. Ferrari will have told him, not that he'll need telling because he's a master tactician himself, that he's got to keep going as fast as he possibly can in the remaining laps before he comes in for his second pit stop. So there is Fisichella about to be lapped by Barrichello and by Coulthard. Mazzacane is there and he's 2 laps down.
Yes, this could be Coulthard's best chance of the race now. While Barrichello's attention is held up in front of him with the, well, he's moving out of the way very, very nicely. So no problems there, no opportunities for Coulthard. Barrichello keeping his head. Now he's got the Benetton ahead of him to lap also.
Nice bit of marshalling. You saw the marshal waving the blue flag there, and that means move over. There is a driver behind you who is going faster and has the right to pass. In comes Jarno Trulli from 6th position. In behind him comes Eddie Irvine from 7th position. Absolutely together. Terrifically exciting. Now is Trulli going to get out and hold his position? Yeah, no! By goodness, it's close. Yes, but look now, Irvine is much closer to him than he was. It was 2 seconds when they came in, and it's virtually nothing now.
I tell you, you never look left in that situation. When the lollipop goes up, you go. You have no visibility. All you can, if you looked in your mirrors, all you see is all of your own mechanics, and that was so close to being contact in the pit lane.
Fighting for track position. Eddie Irvine in the Jaguar going extremely well, holding the Jordan of Jarno Trulli.
Yes, Irvine will have a half a chance, but Trulli get too good a traction out of the Villeneuve chicane there. Trulli now should just about hold his position. Trulli was a long time getting into first gear. Looked like he went dog to dog and just could not get the first gear to connect.
Meantime, up at the front of the San Marino Grand Prix, Michael Schumacher is 20.5 seconds ahead of Mika Häkkinen, who has had his second stop. Michael Schumacher has not. Now, Schumacher, the conventional wisdom is that at a circuit like this, the driver in front has to be at least 20 seconds ahead of the driver behind in order to be able to get into the pit lane, stop, take on new tyres. That's Ralf Schumacher going off. Ferrari are getting ready to come out. I don't think 20 seconds is enough. It needs to be 24, 25 seconds to enable Michael Schumacher to hold that lead. He's coming in earlier than I expected him to, because he must be coming in on the next lap. The mechanics have to come out on the lap that their driver is coming in.
Yes, Barrichello's in the pits this time around. You can see for yourself, Michael Schumacher remains on track. So, yes, you're right. If there was a stop now, then Michael Schumacher would come out still in the lead of this race. He's 21.5 seconds ahead of Häkkinen that time over the line.
And if Michael Schumacher wins this race, it is going to be... He's right up with Villeneuve now, who is in 6th position.
Let me correct that. He would not come out in front of Mika Häkkinen. I'm sorry. Mika Häkkinen would remain in the lead. So Michael Schumacher's got to put another 5, or that's Ralf Schumacher retiring from the race. And Barrichello's in, and so is Coulthard. That's the scrap for 3rd place you've been watching all afternoon. Who's going to get away first? The Ferrari should be easily away first, and it is. Oh, that is so close. Well done. Amazing stop there from the McLaren boys. And just, well, Barrichello did well to avoid an incident there. And surely now, Coulthard's got the faster car. That should give him the podium opportunity. Michael Schumacher's going to have to stay out for at least another 5 or 6 laps if he's going to get track position. There's Ralf Schumacher walking back to the pits. You saw his car pulling off a moment or two back. Coulthard definitely getting his thing hooked, his first gear hooked up this time, and Barrichello just having to yield. Simple as that.
Yeah, a lovely bit of driving by David Coulthard. You want track position here, Rubens? Well, you're not going to get it. In his slots, and now, as Martin has pointed out, and I've had the suspicion all along, here we are, this is it. This is going to be the stop that decides the race. The Ferrari mechanics are now coming out for Michael Schumacher, and the gap is 21.6 seconds as brother Ralf walks in, leaving the stricken Williams BMW behind him. Now, David Coulthard ahead of Barrichello. And look, you see, there's a gap extending all the time. It's beginning to look like question mark first, question mark second, David Coulthard third, Rubens Barrichello fourth, because at last the bung has been released from the bottle that was holding up David Coulthard, and he is fairly streaking away from Rubens Barrichello. Undoubtedly a very frustrated man.
Yes, Coulthard will want to show now just how fast he would have been without the problems at the start, but there's little point in throwing it off the road because he needs to, he will not catch Häkkinen or Michael Schumacher. Schumacher on a hot lap, Murray.
Yeah, very hot indeed. Faster than he's ever been in the first sector. Fastest of all in the second sector. Michael Schumacher, as I expected, is extending his lead over Michael Schumacher, and the Ferrari mechanics are ready for him. James.
Yes, he's going to put less fuel in, of course, than Mika Häkkinen did in his stop. And of course, the McLaren mechanics did a fantastic job for Coulthard. This is where the race is going to be won and lost. It was a 6-2, he's going to do it by about a second, Murray.
Sensational! 2 seconds advantage on the pit stop. There is Michael Schumacher exiting the pit lane. Where is Mika Häkkinen? There he is in the background. The crowd rises. The crowd rises. They can see a chance for their hero, Michael Schumacher, to make it 3 wins in a row, to do the hat-trick for his team Ferrari, and to beat Mika Häkkinen fair and square on the track. Now we're on lap 49 now. There are 13 laps to go, including the one that he is on. He's on fresh tyres, Ferrari will have judged the fuel to perfection. He's on a lighter car than he might have been, and Mika Häkkinen is down in second place. It looks like yet another bit of brilliant tactical thinking by Ross Brawn on the circuit, and Mika Häkkinen and Michael Schumacher at the wheel.
I'm trying to work out the mathematics of all of that, because he didn't just pip Häkkinen out of the pit lane, did he?
Well, he was
positively the pit straight ahead of him. Absolutely amazing.
He's done what we've seen him do before. He was on a real flyer in that lap. You see,
there's part of the answer, the 1:26.8 on his in-lap. So Michael Schumacher there putting in one of his classic sprints when he most needs to. Didn't it make a huge difference?
Nearly 2 seconds faster than last year's fastest lap. Lap 49 then. Schumacher leads. Will he continue to do so? Häkkinen down to second place. Coulthard up to third. Barrichello down to fourth. Villeneuve is fifth ahead of Mika Salo in the Sauber up into sixth position. Jarno Trulli is seventh in the Jordan. Eddie Irvine is eighth. Deniz is ninth. And Alexander Wurz is 10th.
Yes, I think Salo's probably the driver of the race for me at the moment. He's chasing Villeneuve, just 0.4 of a second behind him. This is fifth and sixth place you're looking at. Salo looking particularly menacing to what is one of his best mates, actually, Jacques Villeneuve.
And it's a repeat of what happened in Australia. But if you remember, he had a tremendous battle with Jacques Villeneuve, only to be excluded because of a technical infringement of the rules. No fault of his, it was a fault of the team's, but it cost him precious points. But that Sauber is very, very much improved this year. New chassis, and it has last year's Ferrari engine badged as a Petronas, and you're looking at Jacques Villeneuve fifth, Mika Salo sixth, down to the Rivazza. Meantime, Michael Schumacher 3.7 seconds ahead of Mika Häkkinen after his second stop. But what matters is what are the relative times going to be on this, the 50th lap, with 12 to go after it has been completed. But at the present moment, Michael Schumacher looking strong for 10 World Championship points for the third race in succession. And I was saying earlier on, if Ferrari beat McLaren in this race, it's going to be very depressing for the Woking concern. They lost the first two races, not because of speed, but because of reliability. And we've never really had the chance yet to see on the track the comparative performance of the Ferrari and the McLaren. We've seen it today, aided by a brilliant, masterly strategy, and Michael Schumacher is on lap 51, and there is Mika Häkkinen cutting his way through the traffic.
Strategy's good on the Ferrari, but actually I think it's the hot laps he did just before he came in, plus the stunning in-lap that Michael, I'm just trying to work out the mathematics, it's clearly that stunning in-lap, the 6.2 second stop, and Michael maximised the speed limit through the pit lane.
Lap 51, and you can now at times see the two race leaders, Michael Schumacher and Mika Häkkinen. There's Häkkinen in the same shot. Michael turns into the Rivazza. There is Mika Häkkinen behind him. 3.7 seconds was the gap at the end of the previous lap. They're coming up to the end of lap 51 in this 62-lap race, and we'll see, therefore, whether Mika Häkkinen has been able to take anything out of Michael's lead. And off goes the arrows of Pedro de la Rosa out of the race. He was in the 13th position, and that will enable Ricardo Zonta, who was some 3 seconds behind him, to move up a place. And it means that there are now 16 drivers left in the race out of the 22 who started. Not too bad a decay rate, because this is a circuit which really hits the engines and brakes.
That's a mechanical failure there from De La Rosa. His right rear is not pointing in the direction it should do at all. He just braked over the top before Piratella spun off. Suspension failure there for De La Rosa.
Well, the answer to the question about how close Häkkinen would be to Schumacher after that lap is 1/10 of a second closer. He's still 3.6 seconds behind with 11 laps to go. Here is the race leader. Over the crest behind him comes Mika Häkkinen, who is actually further back than it looks through your television set. and the shattered nose of the arrow signifies that that was quite a hefty thump that De La Rosa had into the barrier. Gaston Mazzacane in 15th position, and David Coulthard is now nearly 11 seconds ahead of Rubens Barrichello in 4th place. Lap 53 out of 62, the closing stages of the San Marino Grand Prix, and Mika Häkkinen is on a colossal charge.
This happened while you were away. De La Rosa spins out of 14th place, I believe, right rear suspension failure, not driver error there for De La Rosa. He limped away from this a little bit, but not a particularly heavy impact. Maybe just got sore feet from pressing the brake pedals around this tough racing circuit. Häkkinen is now the faster of the two leaders. Coulthard pulling clear from Barrichello, some 2 seconds a lap. Now he's managed to spring out in that amazing pit stop where he just got the nod on Barrichello as they pulled out of their respective garages, and Michael Schumacher, role reversal going on now. Michael Schumacher's now got to look at a silver McLaren homing on him, and in most of the afternoon Häkkinen has been watching the Ferrari behind him.
And just to show you how frustrating this race must have been for David Coulthard, he is lapping some 2 seconds faster than Rubens Barrichello now. Just about half a second slower than Mika Häkkinen, and closer than that actually, because David Coulthard is just on a very, very quick lap indeed, which may well turn out to be the fastest lap of the race, faster than Michael Schumacher's 1:26.8, which itself is some 2 seconds faster than the previous fastest lap last year, Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari. But anyway, this is the story of the race.
Another 0.2 of a second faster that time, Häkkinen, so the gap, the lead now down to 2.4 seconds for Michael Schumacher. There it is on your screen, 2.440, traffic ahead of them. Häkkinen now on a sprint. I would think he'll be scratching his head to see that Ferrari ahead of him, just like I was after the pit stop, because the mathematics are amazing there. And he's going to be thinking, how did that Ferrari get out ahead of me by so far?
And Michael Schumacher's going to be thinking, I'm closing up on Mika Sauber, which is in 6th place and battling with Jacques Villeneuve's BAR. I hope they see me coming, realise who I am, and know from the red colour of my car that it's my Ferrari, and move over and let me through, because there is Mika Häkkinen getting closer all the time on lap 54 out of 62. The gap is down to 2.4 seconds. Villeneuve and Salo go into the Rivazza and now out of it. No, I'm sorry, they're coming up towards the end of the lap down to the Traguardo.
Michael's actually quicker on this lap so far through the middle section. He comes over the line now with a 27.3. There's Häkkinen coming over with a 27.7, so the gap now up to 2.7 seconds.
But this is it now, just watch there. The white car is Villeneuve in 5th position. The other one behind is Salo Sauber, which has got Michael Schumacher getting closer and closer all the time on lap 55 out of 62. In what's turned out, as we expected, to be an absolutely riveting race in the closing stages because of the different strategies of the Ferrari and McLaren teams. Michael Schumacher took the lead as a result of that from Mika Häkkinen. Now is Salo. Yes, well done, Mika Salo. He moves over and lets Michael Schumacher through and doesn't delay the Ferrari.
Ferrari engine, of course, in the back of that Sauber, but I think Mika Salo is a straight player, straight guy, and he will not mess around with these two leaders, even though it's left him really falling on. Look how far he's fallen off the back of Villeneuve now. But I'm sure he got a pretty early call to say, Michael's coming up behind you.
Yeah, 10 out of 10 to Mika Salo. That was a very selfless move of his, because he's lost a lot of track time and space to Jacques Villeneuve ahead of him, who's now been passed by Michael Schumacher. And Michael has got the BAR and the Sauber between him and Mika Häkkinen's McLaren. So it's going to depend on how Salo and Villeneuve treat Mika Häkkinen when he comes up to pass them. I've no reason to doubt that they'll be any less generous to him than they were to Michael Schumacher. And the gap between the Ferrari and the McLaren McLaren is down to 2.4 seconds on lap 56 out of 62. I think Mika was actually delayed momentarily there, and every moment is going to matter.
Yeah, Salo was looking in his mirrors saying, well, go on then, go down that side, I'm giving you some space. So Mika did get delayed, but I don't think it was intentional on Salo's part. That was a crucial stage of the race. Michael certainly got the spring on that one.
14 points potentially for Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship, 10 points potentially for McLaren. So if they stay where they are, Ferrari will extend their already massive lead over McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. And of course, if they stay where they are, Michael Schumacher is going to extend his already massive lead over Mika Häkkinen, which is 20 points, to 24 points. But there's many a slip twixt cup and lip. Lap 56, 62-lap race.
Well, we've been saying all afternoon we thought the McLaren, or we're sure the McLaren actually on outright pace is slightly faster, but here we are, both McLarens running, albeit one delayed earlier on, Coulthard, and really Michael's got the legs on them, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I'm
he's
just
where
looking,
he needs to be.
Just looking at the sector times, he's just done the fastest first sector of the race. He's coming through to complete the lap, and the gap goes up to 3.2 seconds, despite a stirring last sector by Mika Häkkinen that you're looking at. Just put a wheel over the curb onto the dust. There's grasscrete there on the inside. What looks like grass is actually perforated concrete blocks, which the grass grows through, and therefore offers some grip to the tyres if you go over the curb. We're on lap 57, so laps 58, 9, 60, 1 and 2, 5 laps to go. Michael Schumacher, in what has got a mythical reputation for reliability, his Ferrari, is in a very, very strong position indeed, because charge as Mika Häkkinen may, he's actually lost a bit of time. Some of that may have been due to traffic, but they've got a clear track now. Lap 58 coming up.
It always amazes me every year how close the cars are. If you compare the McLaren and Ferrari, the philosophies, for example, the Ferrari with a very, very high nose on it, and the detail through the car is so different. Different teams, different drivers, different mentality of the teams, and yet there's nothing to choose between them. 57 laps into this race.
There is Michael Schumacher completing the lap. Now, he was 3.2 seconds ahead, and he's now 2.8 seconds ahead as a result of Mika Häkkinen making the fastest lap of the race, 1:26.7. Mika knows he's really got, I won't say to throw caution to the winds, he's a very calm, methodical bloke, but he knows he's got to dig, as he did yesterday, to get the fastest lap in qualifying, to close the gap on Michael Schumacher, and even then he's got to get past him. Now, the order: Schumacher leads Häkkinen, you can see. Coulthard is 46 seconds behind them, but 23 seconds ahead of Barrichello, who I suspect has got a problem. Jacques Villeneuve has been lapped and is 5th. Picassalo is 6th, half a second behind Villeneuve. 7th is Jarno Trullis-Jordan. 8th is Eddie Irvine, still in the running in the Jaguar. 9th is Pedro Diniz, and 10th is Alexander Wurz. Johnny Herbert in the second Jaguar, still running 11th place.
Well, the next person for Michael to lap, who's some 20 seconds down the road actually, is his own teammate, Rubens Barrichello. Gives you some idea of the pace of these two drivers up front.
That is incredible. Rubens Barrichello is 70 seconds behind Michael Schumacher, and Schumacher is lapping at the present moment in about 1:26, so 1:27. So in another few laps, and as you rightly point out, Martin, the Ferrari would be lapping its teammate. And it goes through now. Häkkinen is 2.6 seconds behind. He certainly isn't giving up. I certainly wouldn't expect him to. McLaren can do nothing to help except keep their fingers crossed and pray for the Finn, who is giving it his everything on lap 59. You can see the gap visually. The gap in terms of time at the end of the lap was 2.6 seconds, and it is decreasing.
Yes, a new fastest lap there again from Mika Häkkinen, 26.604. You can see it on your screen. You're watching a battle royal between two supreme sportsmen who are absolutely on top of their cars and on top of their sport. Absolutely thrilling stuff.
14 wins for Mika Häkkinen in his career. Michael Schumacher has won 37 times. The outstanding driver of his age, already a double world champion, as is Mika Häkkinen, who's actually got more pole positions now, 24, than Michael Schumacher, 23. And there are plenty of people who are now saying, in their view, Mika Häkkinen is as good a driver as Michael Schumacher. That's a contentious point of view, but they hold it very strongly indeed.
He is the double reigning world champion, so he's got a bit of a head start on that argument, I would have thought.
And is he going to win this race? Michael Schumacher coming through now, right at the end of a lap where he started 2.6 seconds behind. He's into his 60, he's 2.5 seconds, he's holding the gap. He's on lap 60 now. This one, the next one, the one after. And Michael, if he wins this race, will have 30 World Championship points. And remember, he joined Ferrari in 1996 from Benetton as double world champion because he wanted a challenge, and he could think of no greater challenge than trying to get Ferrari back into the position they were when Jody Scheckter last won the World Championship for drivers driving a Ferrari in 1979. That's how hard they've been trying. But Mika Häkkinen there is doing everything he can to stop him. He's faster than Michael Schumacher in the first sector by 0.2 of a second, and the Ferrari mechanics sitting there can only do as their McLaren rivals are in their garage: watch and hope and pray.
There's an arrow is about to come into play, where the drivers have been excellent this afternoon in getting out of the way. Michael's quicker in the middle section. He has been all through the afternoon. If Mika can close the gap down, I don't see where he's going to overtake him. But he needs those 10 points more than Michael Schumacher does. Schumacher's got 20 already. He's in for a triple here if he can finish these last few laps and win this medal race. He won here last year. He'll be the third driver to have a double win here in Imola. And Michael Schumacher looking extremely strong, but Mika Häkkinen really does need those 10 points.
Down comes the gap to 2.1 seconds. Out goes Jarno Trulli, or is he just off the track? He's making his way back very carefully to protect the nose wing. But Jos Verstappen is the man in the arrows who is 2 laps down ahead of Michael Schumacher. He needs to move over to let the German through cleanly. He does so. I'm sure he'll do the same thing for Mika Häkkinen. This is lap 61. Just 1 lap to go after that. I can't see even Mika Häkkinen catching and then getting past Michael Schumacher, but stranger things have happened in this world.
Trulli is out of the race. We're getting the information Trulli has actually stopped, but that doesn't affect the top 6. Eddie Irvine now moves up into 7th place, and there's Jarno Trulli being escorted out of the gravel trap.
Rotten day for Jordan. Both their drivers out. Heinz Harald Frentzen, the first one to retire. Other retirements: Mark Genet, Jenson Button, Nick Halpern, John Alesi, Ralf Schumacher, De La Rosa, Verstappen, Mazzacane, Zonta, and now Jarno Trulli. And Michael Schumacher pursued by that man. Mika Häkkinen is very shortly going to start the 62nd and last lap of the San Marino Grand Prix, and he does so now. And the Ferraristas, the Tifosi in the grandstands are holding their breaths. They're going to go mad if Michael Schumacher wins this race for the 2nd year in succession, followed by a McLaren. This year driven by Mika Häkkinen. Last year, the 2nd place car was the McLaren of David Coulthard. The Ferrari mechanics are on the pit lane, and Häkkinen is climbing up from the Tosa, pursuing Michael Schumacher. 1.8 seconds was the gap at the end of the previous lap. The crowd is rising. They're going down to the Acqua Minerale bends, the lowest point of the circuit, where it starts to climb again to the Variante Alta, up to 180 miles an hour. Race leader Schumacher. 2nd place Mika Häkkinen. He can do it. I don't think he will, but he can. If Michael Schumacher makes a mistake, which is more than unlikely, we're going to see a dramatic change.
Unless there's a car ahead, but it's the sister Ferrari of Barrichello, and it's far enough ahead not to come into play in any way, and there's absolutely no way Michael Schumacher will make a mistake to the end of this lap. It's just a question of cruising home now, providing us no silly mechanical dramas. Through the last corner, Murray.
Down to the Trocado and out of it, and Michael Schumacher wins the San Marino Grand Prix by 1.1 seconds from a marvellous Mika Häkkinen. What a sensational race this has been, and the third successive victory for Michael Schumacher and for Ferrari puts him on 30 World Championship points to Mika Häkkinen's 10, Mika Häkkinen's 6, as David Coulthard comes down to the Rivazza to finish a stirring third. He's going to be some 35 seconds ahead of Rubens Barrichello. If only it had been better at the start for David Coulthard, this race could have been very different. So now he's finished first, second and third in 3 successive years. So, no doubt about it, Michael Schumacher, very strong indeed. Look at him. You can see how pleased he is as ever. I've said before, that's Barrichello coming home to finish 4th. So both McLarens home, 1 Ferrari home, the second one about to come home. Jacques Villeneuve has been lapped already, so he's finished 5th. He finished 4th in Australia. Mika Salo takes a justified point this time, provided there's no car problem, as there was in Brazil. And it is points for McLaren, for Ferrari, for BAR. What a wonderful year they're having in comparison with last year. And Sauber will be very pleased indeed. And over to James Allen.
Well, Ross, Murray is going absolutely ballistic, as you can imagine. That was a very audacious switch of strategy.
Well, it wasn't a switch, it's what we planned. I mean, we knew from that position that we had to do certain things, and it worked. I mean, luckily, I think he had a little bit of a problem in his pit stop, but even without that, I think we could have done it. I think what we've got to think about is what happened with Rubens, because that was so close to an accident, and I think we've got to have a think, all the teams, about how we handle that situation. I'm not criticising McLaren, but yeah, that was so close to an accident, and it's